Hey there gamers, today's video is one I've been trying to do for a while and I've failed miserably, never quite managing to nail all the points that I wanted to get across. But I keep seeing video after video where they take one device, and it could be the Lenovo Legion Go, the Steam Deck or the ROG Ally, and they take it, they show you all the wonderful things about it, and then they dump on another type of device saying how bad it is in various areas, and then they come to the conclusion that the device that is their favourite is the favourite for everyone else out there. And what they're forgetting is that everybody's different, everybody wants different things from their device. So the approach I'm going to try today is to take each device in turn, the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally and the Lenovo Legion Go, and say some things that I like about them, some things that I don't like about them, and where the things that I don't like can be mitigated by something else, I'll mention that. And I'm going to try and be as unbiased about it. To be honest, if you said to me, right, I'm going to give you a Steam Deck or an ROG Ally or a Lenovo Legion Go, and that's the only device you can have, I'm going to be perfectly happy. It's like I will change the types of games that I need to play, but you know, I'm not going to complain, because all three, and this is something you won't hear from most other people, all three are fantastic devices. So let's start with the Steam Deck OLED. And if you excuse me, there may be some rustling as I consult my notes. Now, one of the biggest reasons for picking this is, say you're a non-techie, or you're coming from a console background and you don't know anything about Windows, you don't want to learn anything about Windows, you just want a device that you can turn on, get straight to the games and play and have a fantastic time. And that's what this device offers. It's got its own OS, Steam OS, which is built on Linux or Linux, I never know the correct way to pronounce it. And it's a very console-like experience. Now, that's not to say that you can't do more advanced stuff, but to do that you'd have to switch into desktop mode. So if you're never going to do anything but play Steam games on this device, you're never going to need to go to desktop mode. So that's probably one of its top selling features. This particular one is the OLED device. It's just the sort of like mid-season refresh on the Steam Deck. I will say, if you've got a Steam Deck, probably not worth upgrading to this unless you can sell your old Steam Deck and get a decent amount. But all the features that they've incorporated in this, all the quality of life changes, I absolutely love this device. And the biggest one that they've come up with is the OLED screen. And oh boy, weirdly, when I was comparing it to the LED, I was looking at, looking at when it was browsing the games, and I wasn't seeing a huge amount of difference. But over time, I've been playing it, and the games look fantastic, especially ones with deep blacks in them. And also, it's a HDR display, and to me, I never understood what HDR offered. When I did put some games on that supposedly had HDR, I didn't think the change really made a difference. But then I played a certain game called Ori and the Will-O-the-Wisp, and my goodness, it looks amazing compared to the game played on a normal Steam Deck. It's like the blacks are really black, the main character is white but seems to glow, it's just beautiful. And I'll maybe do a video showing gameplay of Ori just to see, in another video. So that's the second major benefit of this, is a beautiful screen. It's very good. I would say it's, in normal sort of games, I'd say it's probably marginally better than the ROG Ally and the Lenovo Legion Go. But where you've got games that are very dark and broody, I think the Steam Deck will look even better. Another positive for this is they've refreshed it with a 50 watt-hour battery, and that has really made a difference to battery life. It's something in the order of 30 to 50% battery increase. It can make the difference between playing an extra hour, 2 hours, and for lower TDP games, it's like multiple hours. I think I started playing Vampire Survivors on here, and it was literally from a full battery. I think it was talking about 7 or 8 hours at least playing that game, which is pretty impressive to begin with. Okay, so why else would you want to play this? You have this device. If most of your games are on Steam, this is perfect for you. Just be aware if you have games on other PC game stores like EA, Blizzard, and Ubisoft, then you would have to go into desktop mode and install those launchers. There are sort of like programs now that combine them into one to make it really easy to do, but you would have to do that if you want to try and get those games running. So who would I recommend this for? If you play a lot of indie games, if you play a lot of 2D games, and you like playing some AAAs that it can handle. It can handle a fair few, but there's some that just seem to be a little bit beyond it. Then this is the device for you. Now, that's all the positives, and I know I've been gushing about this device. I do love them all, as I say. Why wouldn't you want this? Compatibility. Okay, so when you go to the store, you'll see you've got a filter under here, and you've got, well, let's go to... So you can have games here, and it'll tell you which ones are great on deck. And when you go to the store, if I pop over to the store here, when you're browsing through the games, it will have little icons that tell you if a game is even playable on the Steam Deck. So see this little green verified tick. And for the most part, you can kind of trust that, but there are the odd games that even though they have a green tick, I wouldn't say that they're playable, but they're very few and far between. And then you've got things like this orange information, which means it's probably playable, but there's a few things that might make it a bit more difficult, like small text, need to interact with the keyboard, that sort of thing. So that's one compatibility issue. The other is if you like to play online games, such as Call of Duty, I think Fortnite, that have anti-cheat in them, this device will struggle. Basically, this device isn't running Windows, it's running Linux, as I said before. And one of the things the anti-cheat is looking for is a Windows system. And so the second it sees, hold on, this is Linux, this shouldn't be running, it'll kick you out. So it won't let you play online games. Now, that's not to say that the other devices are great at playing them. They should be able to, but these anti-cheats sometimes see the overlays that you use for modifying TDP and various settings as being a cheat program. So I've found myself on Call of Duty in the shadow lobby, shadow banned, and playing in a lobby there, taking ages to get a game, purely because my TDP setting changed. So it's not all rosy out there, but you stand a much better chance of playing those multiplayer games on either the ROG Ally or the Lenovo Legion Go. Let me consult my notes again. So, if performance bothers you, i.e. if knowing that this device isn't as powerful as the ROG Ally or the Lenovo Legion Go, if you want to try and run things at the maximum frames per second you can get on a handheld device, if you want to try and run them at higher resolutions or just with higher quality detail, then again, this is probably not the device for you. To counteract that or counterbalance it, I should say the 800p screen is beautiful. It hides a lot of issues that you might have with games. You can get some really stunning looking games on it. And to be honest, I've been playing some games recently on the Lenovo Legion Go, the one with the biggest screen, at 800p, and absolutely loving it. So, you know, there are sort of reasons not to be too bothered about screen size, and also frames per second. It seems like we're more tolerant on the Steam Deck of playing games at 30 frames per second locked, and I've had this snobbery on the ROG Ally and the Legion Go that, you know, I don't want to play games at less than 40 frames per second. And yet, when I play on this device with it fixed at 30, it's perfectly playable. And in fact, it's not that long ago, a couple of years ago, where consoles, you'd be playing at 30 frames per second, fixed anyway. So, I'm not sure what my point here is. I think I lost it, so I do apologise. Okay, so what I'm going to do is pause the video, set up the ROG Ally, and talk over that device. Welcome back. Here we have the ROG Ally. This is a device I picked up after my initial LED Steam Deck, and I absolutely loved it. For me, it was close to perfection, possibly just needed a bigger screen. But let's talk over the strengths. So again, we're going to go with strength of the screen. So okay, it's not OLED, and I'd say in terms of color depth and just beauty of image, it's like the Steam Deck has it beat. But then what this does have is 1080p. It's a native landscape screen. So one thing I didn't mention is that the Steam Deck and the Lenovo Legion Go are portrait screens. So essentially screens that should be like that, can't really show it on the camera, that have been tricked in software to then rotate through 90 degrees so that it becomes a landscape screen. And that has various issues. I won't go into them. I want to keep this as brief as possible. So this is native landscape, so there are some issues that you might have on a Lenovo Legion Go, changing drivers, that you wouldn't have on this device. But the biggest thing is VRR. Now, to me, VRR has never been a big deal, but there's a lot of people, probably with high-end gaming PCs and very high refresh rates and monitors with VRR, that will notice if the screen is tearing, not performing optimally. So what VRR does, or variable refresh rate, is when a game is varying wildly in the frames per second that it's putting out, VRR adjusts the refresh rate, and so it has the effect of smoothing those frames, and I think it's something like there's less tearing, so it's a much better experience. Now, having said that, the Steam Deck never had VRR, and I think never really was an issue, because what we were doing on the Steam Deck was fixing frames per second to lower than it could go at maximum, but meaning that we would having like a steady refresh rate that the device could play the game at, and it just meant that there was going to be less tearing, and so a much better experience. And this is something I'm starting to investigate doing on the Legion Go as well, just to have, sorry, it's timing out. So just to have that smoothness of play. But honestly, even without the smoothing and running at full frames per second, the Lenovo Legion Go, I never really noticed the VRR issues. That's not to say other people don't. Now, what else can I say about this device? It's, in my opinion, the best speakers of the three. It's the one device that when I've been playing the others, I pick up and go into a game, and the sound always catches me. You know, it's like it's deeper. It's got more depth to it, I'd say. Just sounds better. But going with the counter argument, a lot of the time, if you're playing these devices on the go, you're not going to be sitting there with speakers. You're going to annoy everyone on the bus, on the train, on the plane. You know, you're going to have headphones in there, and when you've got headphones in there, the quality is pretty much of a muchness. So it's great if you can sit there and play with the speakers booming out, but it's never been an issue for me. What else is good about this? It's the lightest of the three, and it's the smallest of the three. Although it's not, weirdly, I've sort of measured in it, it's not as small as you think it is. When I've had it where I've put the Steam Deck from this side and put a book there to line them up, and there's not that much of a difference in the gap there. I feel the styling cues on this hide a lot of, seem to hide a lot of the size, and also just a cutout here. But yeah, it's definitely the lightest, and if you do care about wielding something around, you're going to have it in your backpack along with other stuff, then this is probably the device that's going to be best suited to you in that respect. Another reason, compatibility. This is running Windows. It's a Windows PC handheld, so it's going to be compatible with the most games, more games even than the Steam Deck. There will be issues with drivers and things. That's kind of a given for the PC gaming industry in general. Certain driver versions are incompatible, cause issues. But overall, if there's a game out for the PC, this can run it. Unless obviously it's like, only for top of the range PCs with a 4090 graphics card, in which case you'll struggle. I mean, one game that I think this device struggles with, in fact, they all do, would be Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora. And I think that's just like a memory issue. These have 16 gig, all of them have 16 gig memory. I definitely think newer devices should be made with 32 gig as standard. Just because we're also stealing memory away from that 16 gigs for the video card. There isn't a video card, but for the video memory, when in a desktop PC, you would actually have dedicated video memory and still have 16 gig left. So I would like to see, especially on the refresh, say the ROG Ally 2, it coming with 32 gig. Why would you want this? You can play multiplayer games with anti-cheat. However, as I said in the Steam Deck section, I kind of get put into shadow banned because of the overlay. Maybe if I played multiplayer games more, I would be more conscious of that and wouldn't pop up the overlay at all in the game. Perhaps I'd shut down Armory Crate before starting the game, and that would help. I've certainly seen people playing Call of Duty on the Lenovo Legion Go quite happily, and on the ROG Ally. So it's just something to be aware of if you do like that type of game. Also, it's a lot easier to play games from other stores. Because you're in Windows, it's you can do everything in there without swapping out to a desktop mode. You're in desktop mode. And people hate a lot on Windows. It's probably because I'm a PC gamer. I'm also like a software engineer, so I've spent a lot of time working with Windows professionally as well, and Linux, etc. But it's not a problem for me. I feel people exaggerate the number of interruptions and problems that you have. Yes, it's a bit of a pain to get started, but that's, when you get this fresh out of the box and have to do all the updates. There are issues with updating drivers from time to time, but these devices are now getting, well, the ROG Ally's had it for some time where it'll tell you about driver updates. The Legion Go's just had an update that allows you to check if there's any drivers that you need to update, so that's improving things. But honestly, I'm sitting there, I'm in a game, I rarely get interrupted at all. Now, that's the good things. What about the bad things? The biggest gripe I have about the ROG Ally is it runs too hot. And that doesn't bother me most of the time for gaming. I don't feel that heat in my hands. But the side effect of that heat, if you look up here, this is kind of the exhaust fans for the heat that the CPU generates. And what we've got here is the SD card slot. So what I've had happen, is that the SD card, I've destroyed about 3 in this device just through heat alone, and I was aware of it and I was being very careful, so I turned off the turbo mode. I was not running it at 25 watts most of the time. I was on 18 watts. I was doing everything I could to avoid the SD card reader burnout, and I managed to avoid the SD card reader burnout. It still supposedly works, but an SD card will stop functioning after it's been in there for a while with the heat that this device generates. Having said that, apparently revision 8 and 9 of these devices have fixed this problem, but how you tell that you're going to get an 8 or 9 revision, I don't know. I've also seen that if you do have this issue and RMA it back in recent months, they'll send it back and it will have the whatever fix they've applied. Maybe it's some heat shielding or whatever, but essentially they don't tend to burn out again. So I guess worst is, you know, if it does burn out, RMA it, which is returning it to be fixed, and then it shouldn't happen anymore. But that's a bit of a pain. So that's probably the biggest reason I would say not to get it. Don't get it if you hate Windows. It seems silly to have to say it, but it's a Windows-based handheld gaming PC. If you don't like Windows, avoid it like the plague. Unless it's important to you that you play multiplayer games, or that you like the extra power, the extra frames per second, and the compatibility. It's that balancing act. Battery life. Worst of the 3. I'd say it was sort of on par with a Steam Deck LED, unless you were running that Steam Deck on games that were where you had the TDP turned right down. It's a 40 watt hour battery. It does eat that power, and it will run out even quicker than the Legion Go. I've seen various tests, and it's very much the LED and the ROG Ally, the LED Steam Deck and the ROG Ally tend to run out of battery first. Then it's the Legion Go, and then the Steam Deck OLED has varying degrees of time after the Legion Go's run out, where it'll keep going. So battery life is another issue. However, all of these devices, I would recommend getting a power bank, and that's just, you can just extend your game time. The only reason to do it. I'd thoroughly recommend one. There's a Baseus 65 watt one I got from Amazon. I've used it on all 3 devices. It's wonderful. The other reason, the more recent thing about not buying one of these, apparently this year there's going to be a 2024 refresh to this model. So maybe you would want to hold off until that comes, and then you might have a slightly better device. It might have a lot better features. It's meant to have been, I think it was mentioned by Asus's head in India. So it's someone in Asus. Hopefully it's accurate. But, you know, your decision. Do you want to hold off, or do you want to have the benefit of playing on this device right now? And that's everything I wanted to cover for the ROG Ally. So I'm going to pause the video, get the Lenovo Legion in, and do the same. So here we have the big boy, and it really is a big boy, but we'll cover that. So, consulting my notes, a lot of the same reasons for getting this coincide with the same reasons for the ROG Ally, but I'm going to restate them anyway. So, what's the biggest reason for this? The one reason I bought this is for the larger screen. No other reason. It's a 1600p screen. You have 800p, 1200p and 1600p. And a lot of people thought that there wouldn't be any games that you could run at 1200 or 1600. It's true that there's a lot of games that won't run at that res, but it's when you find the ones that can, it makes all the difference. Also, just being able to have like more screen real estate, I just find Windows less clunky to use on this device than on the ROG Ally. You know, I can, you know, the cursor, I can type on the keyboard. I find the keyboard restrictive on the Ally. So it just makes it a more usable device from that perspective. Now, the colour, I personally think that the colour's slightly, ever so slightly better than the ROG Ally. The greens, to me, a little bit greener, likewise the reds, but tiny amount in it. And I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't pick a device based on the colour difference on that. I'd be happy with either one. Again, the Steam Deck, best screen of the three, but, you know, not as powerful as this. Another thing I love, 2 USBs. It seems simple, seems odd that would be something I got excited about, but you could literally plug in a charger, plug in an external SSD, so you've got more disk space, or you can plug in other devices and still have charging without buying a dock. One of the big ones, which I failed to mention in the ROG Ally, if you're in the market for an external GPU, so I think GPD make one, another company has just come on the market and they're selling external GPUs that would bring a bit more like desktop power, not completely, but you know, much better graphics if you were in a docked mode. This device has a USB 4, so you can plug those in and get that extra grunt for your graphics. It's expensive, but if you were to try that on the ROG Ally, what they've got, I'll just bring it in shortly, briefly, is they've got a custom. You can't really see it. No. So this little bit along here that's all blurry is their XG something interface. And so they've got a proprietary interface, which means if you want to pay for an eGPU, an external GPU, you're going to get hit with a premium. I mean, they were, I'm sure it was in the region of 1,400 compared to about 500 for the other externals. You know, it was that order when I was looking at them. Do your own research if you are thinking about buying one, but it will cost you more for the ROG Ally one, without a doubt. With that being said, personally, I wouldn't buy an eGPU. I would, you know, I have a gaming laptop, but I think even if I didn't, I would probably be more tempted to get a cloud gaming service, like GeForce Now, and rent out a 4090 or something like that, you know, and just stream to the device from there, and that works really well. I have done that, and you can pay for an awful lot of streaming of this. It was something like $99 for 6 months, or £99 for 6 months. It's you know, that's quite a few years you could pay for that without getting to the point of the price of an external GPU. Another thing I love, simple, but the built-in kickstand. It just makes it nice when you've got a surface to rest on, you put it on there. And in fact, now it's like I can't live without a kickstand of some sort on any of my devices. So I've got something like this, so I can, you know, just put the ROG Ally down. I've clipped something to my Steam Deck, so that I can just have that stand. So that was really nice. It comes, you know, with the device. Again, similar to the ROG Ally, maximum compatibility. So most of the games should be able to run, unless it's just too demanding a game for the hardware. But all the sort of like the other stores, you can easily download and install on here without having to go to a separate desktop mode. One thing, it was kind of brave of them to do something different, is Lenovo has detachable controllers. So, you know, these things unclip, you know, just a small switch. And I do this so rarely that, oh, there we go. So both the controllers come off. You can use it as a tablet, so if you don't have a tablet, you can do that. Yeah. So anyway, so, you know, you clip them back on. You've got the same on this side, and this one actually can sit in to a little holder that comes with the device, and it becomes like an upright mouse. So you would grip it in that, you know, vertically, and it works like a mouse. It's meant to be for FPS mode, but I think it's really good for real-time strategy games. To be honest, I don't use this feature. If I wanted to play games with a mouse and a keyboard, I would just plug them in. I've got a dock. I could use the USB port. You know, it's not something that really excited me. It's not why I bought the device. But for some people, that might be a nice feature that they want to make use of. So let's get to the negatives. This is a heavy unit. This is a big boy. It's thick and beefy. You know, when you're holding it, you know you're holding it. It's by far the heaviest of the three. What more can be said? They've packed a lot in here. You've got to bear in mind it's got a battery in either controllers. It's got a battery in here. But yes, if you were standing there and holding it for any length of time, it would be like a military boot camp, you know, where they're forced to hold their rifle out as a punishment. It would be a bit like that. Now, having said that, I don't have a problem with the weight, because I never ever stand there supporting, you know, play the device unsupported. It's either on a desk, or if I'm sat in a chair, it's like my knees are resting, sorry, my elbows are resting on my knees, supporting the weight through that. If I'm sort of laid out on the chair, I can always find a position where at least one elbow's supported, and, you know, I never have the full weight going down through my hands. So weight just isn't an issue for me. But again, I guess if you're going to carry it around in a backpack and have a load of other stuff, it may be more of an issue for you. Now, I just spoke about the controllers and it being a brave decision. I think this right controller, because of the way they're using it as a mouse, has been compromised. And the reason I'm saying that, so if we look, so on this controller, and this is like all the other devices, well, the ROG Ally only has one back button, but on the Steam Deck you have two vertical buttons, and your fingers just sort of like sit on them naturally. But on the vertical mouse side, the buttons are horizontal, and what that results in is my fingers still sit on here and here, but if I would use back buttons, it's like I would have to move that finger back there. So it just feels a bit clunky, you know, that I have to use a different hand movement to trigger the buttons on this right controller. And here's the countermeasure to that. I haven't used a single game with a back button. It's like all the games I've played, I've never felt the need to have a back button. That's a lie. I have done where I've been streaming from the PlayStation 5 down to my Steam Deck or this device. No, mainly the Steam Deck. I have mapped the two back buttons to be the PlayStation button and, you know, the tap on the sort of like little touchpad area of the DualSense controller. So that's the one time I've used those back buttons. I never map them, I never use them. So to me, it is compromised, but I don't care because I never use it. But you might. Another thing, the sound on this device. Worst of the three, it's got, because, and this is where I said that these have compromised the device, because these are detachable, you can't really have the speakers in them. So what they've done is they've loaded up the speakers on the top of the device. And so those speakers are blasting, well, not blasting either, they're sending off that sound upwards rather than at you. Also, out of the box, the speakers are really weak. It's a volume thing. I found I couldn't, I would have it up to near full volume to get a decent level of sound. So if you do have one of these devices, go onto the Microsoft App Store and download FX Sound, and then put it to the gaming preset. And honestly, it's like it fixed that weakness of the sound. So I feel like the volume is now decent enough, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that this is probably the worst sounding of the three devices. And then to argue the other side, like I said earlier, it's like I'm going to plug headphones in if I'm ever playing this out and about. And if I decide, you know what, I really feel like the sound adds to the atmosphere of the game, I'm going to plug headphones in. I don't care too much about the sound, so long as I can hear it. But it is also very noticeable when I switch to the ROG Ally how much the sound is better. Again, another reason for not liking this. If you don't like Windows, don't buy a Windows gaming PC unless you're willing to learn. Simple. And then what else? Battery life, again, it's better battery life than an ROG Ally, but you're never gonna, if you're running a AAA game, it's like you're never going to play it for long enough. Well, that's not true for me. I can play in sessions of 2 hours and be quite happy. But if I was going on a long haul flight and wanted to play, I'm going to be taking the Steam Deck with me just for the battery life. But I have done medium length flights, and this plus a power bank that I mentioned earlier, more than enough gaming for me. But it's going to be a weakness on all these devices. People don't understand or just don't know that the technology for these devices, it's kind of maxing out right now. There's we need new technology, and there's some new battery technologies that are coming along. But the big problem we have is more powerful CPUs. They put out more heat, which requires more cooling, which requires fan noise, which we don't like. And you've got to dissipate that heat, otherwise your device is going to throttle and or burn. So these are compromised devices, and I'm just amazed that we can play what we can on them. So I have spoken for ages. Hopefully you've not all fallen asleep. I will put chapters in at least for where I'm start talking about each of the devices. So I hope this proves helpful for you if you're wanting to decide on one of these devices. Please leave a comment in the bottom underneath the video if it's proven helpful. If you hate it, can you put there what you hate about it? But please be civil. That's all I ask. I would love to learn how to improve my presentation, what people are wanting from a video. So all feedback is good feedback, so long as you just bear in mind we're all human beings. Let's be civil. So thank you all for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon.